My name is Tariq, and for 45 years, I was a man made of iron. I believed that life was an equation. If you put in the correct variables, prayer, fasting, discipline, reputation, the result would inevitably be salvation. I lived my life by the clock and the compass. My knees knew the texture of the mosque carpet better than they knew the grass of a park or the comfort of my own bed. To my neighbors in Amman, I was Sheikh Tariq, the unmovable pillar, the man who never missed a prayer, the man who never smiled unless it was necessary. They respected me. They feared me. And in my arrogance, I mistook their fear for love. It was a Tuesday evening when the foundation of my life began to crack. The sun was setting, casting a bruised orange light over the limestone rooftops of the city. The adhan began to echo from the minarets, a beautiful, haunting sound that usually filled me with purpose. But that night, it only reminded me of the scorecard I kept in my head. I checked my watch. 2 minutes early. Perfect. I adjusted my white thobe, smoothing an invisible crease. I walked into the mosque, not as a humble servant, but as an inspector. My eyes darted left and right. Ahmed is slouching. Youssef is whispering again. Where is Kareem? My son. My greatest failure. The anger started in my stomach, a familiar acidic burn. Kareem was 19, and every day he drifted further from the path I had laid out for him. I saw his rebellion not as a young man's confusion, but as a personal insult to my authority. I have raised a kafir, I thought bitterly as I prostrated myself. I have built a fortress of faith, and my own son is opening the gates to the enemy. I prayed, but my words were hollow. They were heavy stones I was stacking, one by one, trying to build a wall high enough to keep God's wrath out. When I returned home, the sound of my sandals slapping against the pavement echoed like gunshots. I opened the heavy wooden door of my apartment, ready for war. There he was, Kareem, sitting on the sofa, headphones on, head bobbing to some noise that I considered poison. He didn't even hear me enter. Is this how you prepare for the grave? I asked. My voice wasn't loud. I rarely shouted, but it was cold. It was the voice I used to correct errors in Quranic recitation. Kareem jumped, tearing the headphones off. Baba! I didn't hear you! You were missing from Maghrib, I said, closing the door and locking it. While I led the community, my own son sat here filling his ears with filth. It's not filth, he shot back, a flicker of defiance in his eyes that I wanted to extinguish. It's just music, and I prayed here. God hears me here, doesn't he? God hears the obedient. I stepped closer, looming over him. Do you think Allah is a senile uncle who hands out treats because you ask nicely? He is the King of Kings. He demands discipline. I have spent my life building a reputation, Kareem, a legacy of piety, and you are tearing it down brick by brick. Kareem stood up. He was taller than me now, but he shrank in my presence. Maybe I don't want to live in your building, he shouted, his voice shaking. You talk about Allah like he's a prison warden. You talk about mercy, but I've never seen you show it. Not to Mom, not to me. The accusation hit me like a physical slap. My face grew hot. I discipline you because I love you. I am trying to save you from the fire. You are the fire, Baba, Kareem screamed, tears spilling over. I can't breathe in this house. You suffocate everything you touch. The rage boiled over. It was white hot and blinding. I raised my hand. I didn't intend to strike him, only to silence the insolence, to reestablish the order that was crumbling around me. I opened my mouth to deliver the verdict that would crush him. And then the gavel broke. It wasn't a pain at first. It was a pressure. Immense. Absolute. It felt as though a giant hand had reached inside my chest and crushed my heart into a pulp. The anger in my throat turned into a strangled gasp. My left arm swung dead at my side, heavy as lead. Baba? Kareem's anger vanished instantly, replaced by terror. I tried to speak, I wanted to say, "Stand up straight. Don't look at me like that." But my knees betrayed me. The Persian carpet rushed up to meet my face. I hit the floor hard, the impact jarring my teeth, but I barely felt it. "Baba! Baba!" Kareem was screaming. I felt hands on my shoulders. His hands. He was shaking me. I stared up at the ceiling. The intricate plaster patterns were spinning, dissolving into a vortex. A darkness was creeping in from the periphery of my vision, a black shutter closing on the lens of my life. Not now, I thought, panic finally piercing my armor. I haven't finished. I haven't fixed him. My ledger is not balanced. The squeezing became a tearing. A sound like wet fabric ripping echoed in my ears. The sound of my soul detaching from the anchor of my flesh. The last thing I saw was my son's face, twisted in horror. The last thing I felt was the crushing weight of my own unfinished expectations. And then the silence took me. I expected nothingness. Or perhaps the grave, the damp earth, the questioning angels, the darkness I had warned so many about. Instead, I stood up. The pain in my chest was gone. The heaviness of my 45 years, the stiffness in my back, the constant low-level thrum of anxiety, the exhaustion of maintaining a facade. It had all evaporated. I felt light. Impossibly, terrifyingly light. "Kareem?" I said. I turned around. There was a body on the floor. It was a man in a white thobe, crumpled like a discarded tissue. His face was gray, his mouth open in a silent gasp. A young man was pounding on the dead man's chest, weeping hysterically. My wife, Layla, was rushing into the room, screaming a sound that tore at my heart. "Stop!" I said. "I am here." I reached out to touch Layla's shoulder, to comfort her, to tell her to stop making such a scene. My hand passed through her shoulder as if she were made of smoke. I stared at my hand. It was translucent, shimmering like heat haze over asphalt. I looked back at the body on the floor. That is me. That was me. The realization was cold and absolute. I was dead. The book of deeds was closed. The ink was dry. There were no more prayers to say, no more apologies to make, no more chances to earn my way. Suddenly, the room began to dissolve. The walls of my apartment, the weeping of my family, the distant wail of the ambulance siren. It all faded away, like watercolor paint washing off a canvas in the rain. The floor beneath me vanished. I did not fall. I simply found myself elsewhere. The sky was not black, nor was it blue. It was the color of bruised iron. There was no sun, yet there was a stark, revealing light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It cast no shadows, leaving nothing hidden. I looked down. My breath caught in my throat. I was standing on the edge of a precipice. Before me lay a chasm so wide I could not see the other side. Below, in the depths of the canyon, a fire roared. But it was not a fire of wood and coal. It was a fire of noise. I heard screams of regret, the gnashing of teeth, the echoes of every lie ever told, every dollar stolen, every heart broken. The heat rising from it was not physical. It was a wave of shame. "The Sirat," I whispered. The bridge. I had preached about this 1,000 times. The bridge over hell, thinner than a hair, sharper than a sword. Only the righteous could cross. Only those whose deeds were sufficient. I straightened my back. I adjusted my spiritual posture, just as I had adjusted my thobe. I am ready, I told myself. I prayed 5 times a day. I gave zakat. I fasted every Ramadan. I memorized the book. I was a leader. I was iron. I looked across the void. A thin line stretched across the darkness, shimmering like a spiderweb made of glass. Cross. The voice did not come from a mouth. It came from the air itself. It was deep, resonant, and terrifyingly neutral. It offered no comfort, only a command. I stepped forward. I placed my bare foot on the glass line. It held. See? My mind raced, clutching at my old arrogance. I am righteous. My works sustain me. I took another step. The abyss roared below me, hungry and loud. I kept my eyes fixed on the horizon, refusing to look down. I began to recite the verses of protection, my voice steady, my cadence perfect. But as I took the third step, I felt it. A weight. On my back. I paused. I looked over my shoulder. There was a sack on my back, strapped to my shoulders with heavy, rusted chains. I hadn't noticed it before. It was pulsating, oozing a black, tar-like substance that smelled of decay. "What is this?" I gasped. I carried nothing with me. I tried to shrug it off, but the chains were fused to my skin. They were part of me. I looked closer at the black tar. Within the ooze, faces began to form. I saw the face of a beggar I had ignored because I was late for prayer. I saw the face of my brother, whom I hadn't spoken to in 10 years because of a dispute over land. I saw Layla flinching when I raised my voice, and I saw Kareem, tear-stained, shrinking, broken by my expectations. No, I thought, panic rising. No, these are small things. I did great things. I built the mosque. I funded the school. I took another step, desperate to outrun the weight. But with every step, the sack grew heavier. It was the weight of my pride. It was the weight of my judgment. It was the weight of every time I had chosen to be right instead of kind. The glass bridge beneath me gave a sickening crack. My intentions were pure, I shouted into the void, my voice cracking. I did it for God. I did it for you. Did you? A whisper echoed in my mind, sounding uncomfortably like my own conscience. Or did you do it to be feared? Did you do it to be the Iron Imam? The sack grew heavier. The black tar dripped down my legs, staining the pristine glass bridge. Under the corrosion of my own hidden sins, the bridge shattered. There was no time to grab anything. The illusion of my righteousness crumbled into dust. I screamed, clutching at the empty air, and I plummeted into the roaring dark. I fell. The wind rushed past me, screaming my own name, accusing me. Hypocrite, tyrant, failure. You built a tower of sand, Tariq. I saw the fire rushing up to meet me. The heat of shame was unbearable. I closed my eyes. I knew, with terrifying clarity, that I deserved this. My equation had failed. My variables were wrong. I did something I hadn't done in years. I didn't recite a memorized prayer. I didn't quote a scripture to prove a point. I didn't demand. I simply broke. "Save me!" I screamed, with no title, no dignity, just a desperate, dying soul. "God, I have nothing. I am empty. Save me!" My fall stopped. It wasn't a gradual slowing. It was an instant, jarring halt. My arm was nearly wrenched from its socket. A hand had grabbed my wrist. I gasped, dangling over the abyss, my feet kicking at the empty air. I looked up. A man was kneeling on a protrusion of rock that shouldn't have been there. He was leaning out over the fire, far further than was safe, holding me by one arm. The strength in that grip was terrifying. It was the strength that spins galaxies and holds mountains in place, yet it was gentle. I looked at the man's face. I expected an angel of wrath with a sword of fire. I expected a demon coming to collect his due. Instead, I saw a face that shone like the sun at dawn. Yet it did not blind me. It was a face of Middle Eastern complexion, with a beard like mine, but eyes that held the depth of the ocean. And he was crying. "I have you," the man said. He pulled. With effortless grace, he hoisted me up from the void and onto the solid rock. I collapsed, gasping for air, shaking violently. I scrambled away from the edge, curling into a ball, waiting for the punishment to continue. I looked up at my savior. The man was wearing simple, rough-spun robes, white as light. My eyes traveled to his hands. There were holes in his wrists, deep, scarred tunnels where jagged iron had once been driven through. My breath caught in my throat. I knew the stories. I knew the prophets. But this was not what I had been taught. Isa, I whispered, my voice trembling. Isa ibn Maryam? The man smiled. It was a smile that broke my heart and put it back together in the same second. I am he said. His voice was not like the thunder of the void. It was like the sound of water in a desert. Why? I wept, looking at my own hands. They were covered in the black tar from the sack, the filth of my pride. I am not one of yours. I denied your divinity. I preached against your cross. I told people you were just a messenger. Why did you catch me? Jesus sat down on the rock, descending to my level. He didn't tower over me. He sat with me. Because you called out, Tariq, and I never refuse a heart that knows it is broken. But the bridge. I pointed to the shattered remains of the glass path. I failed. My deeds. They were too heavy. I couldn't carry them. The bridge you tried to build was made of your own works, Tariq, Jesus said gently. It will always shatter. No man can walk to God on a path of his own making. The weight of the human heart is too great. You cannot buy heaven with currency made of dust. He held out his scarred hands. I am the bridge. I am the crossing. No one falls who holds on to me. I looked at the black stain covering my skin. I felt a deep, burning shame. I wanted to hide. I cannot touch you. I am unclean. I have judged everyone. I have crushed my own son. Look at me. I am filthy. Jesus reached out. He did not recoil. He did not hand me a book of rules to clean myself. He did not order me to perform ablutions. He placed his scarred hand directly onto my stained chest. No, I flinched. I will dirty you. You cannot stain me, Tariq, he said. I cleanse you. Where he touched me, the black tar hissed and evaporated. It didn't just fall off. It was annihilated. A wave of heat, not the heat of the fire, but the heat of life, rushed through my spirit. It started in my chest and flooded my veins. The shame vanished. The guilt of 20 years of harshness dissolved. The need to be right, the need to be feared, the need to be the Iron Imam. It was all washed away. For the first time in my existence, I felt clean. Truly, internally clean. I fell forward, grabbing the hem of his robe, sobbing uncontrollably. I wasted it, I cried into the fabric. I wasted my life building a prison and calling it a palace. Nothing is wasted if it brings you here, he said, placing a hand on my head. We sat there for a moment that felt like an eternity of peace. Stay with me, Jesus said. There is peace here. No more striving. No more fear. You are home, Tariq. I looked up. Behind him, I saw a garden. The colors were vibrant. Colors I didn't have names for. I heard the sound of a river. I felt a pull toward it so strong, it was almost physical. To rest. Finally, to rest from the exhausting work of being me. But, Jesus gestured with his hand. The air shimmered, and a window opened in the gray sky. I saw my living room again. The paramedics had arrived. They were working on my body, inserting a tube down my throat, pressing pads to my chest. But they were shaking their heads. A man in a uniform checked his watch. Time of death. In the corner of the room, Kareem was curled up on the floor. He was rocking back and forth, pulling at his hair. It's my fault, Kareem was whispering over and over. I killed him. I killed him. God hates me. I am cursed. My heart, my new beating heart, shattered. He thinks God killed me to punish him, I realized aloud. He will live the rest of his life believing God is a monster. He will become hard, just like me, or he will run from God forever. I looked at the garden, then at the window. I want to stay, I whispered, more than anything. I am tired, Lord. I know, Jesus said softly. But he needs to know, I said, pointing to the window. He needs to know that you are not the angry warden I told him you were. He needs to know that there is mercy. Jesus smiled, and a tear traced a path down his cheek. That is the heart of a father, Tariq. That is my heart. Can I go back? I asked. Is it permitted? It will be painful, Jesus warned. Your body is broken. The world is heavy, and they will call you crazy. They will say the lack of oxygen damaged your mind. I don't care, I stood up. He needs to know about the hand that catches. Jesus stood and placed his hands on my shoulders. He leaned in close. Go. Tell them that the bridge is not made of glass. It is made of love. Tell them I am not waiting to push them. I am waiting to catch them. He leaned forward and kissed me on the forehead. Breathe, my son. Pain. It hit me like a freight train. My chest felt like it had been crushed by a boulder. My ribs screamed. My throat was filled with fire. I gasped. A horrible, ragged sound that tore through the silence of the room. It sounded like a rusted hinge forcing itself open. Whoa! A voice shouted. Something metal clattered to the floor. I opened my eyes. The light was harsh, fluorescent, and humming. I was cold. So incredibly cold. I was naked, covered only by a sheet. The smell of antiseptics stung my nose. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't obey. I wheezed, sucking in air that felt too thick. Doctor! Doctor! Someone was screaming. Faces appeared above me, eyes wide with terror and confusion. A man in scrubs backed away, holding a clipboard like a shield. He has no pulse. The machine is flat, the nurse yelled. Check it again. I managed to turn my head. I recognized the room. It was the preparation room of the hospital morgue. I wasn't on a bed. I was on a steel slab. I forced my lungs to work. Kareem! The doctor froze. He stepped forward, putting a trembling hand on my neck. His eyes went wide. Get a gurney! Get him to ICU! Now! The next hours were a blur of shouting, needles, bright lights, and the sensation of being wheeled rapidly down corridors. I heard snippets of conversation. Impossible. Brain dead. Miracle. But through the chaos and the agony of my recovering heart, I felt a strange, alien sensation in the center of my chest. Peace. Absolute, unshakable peace. The Iron Imam was dead. Someone else had come back. It was 2 days before I could speak properly. The doctors called it a Lazarus syndrome, a delayed return of spontaneous circulation. They used words like anomaly and medical mystery. They tested my brain function, expecting damage, expecting a vegetable. They found nothing but clarity. When they finally allowed my family in, Layla came first. She looked like she had aged 10 years in 2 days. She wept, kissing my hand, praising Allah for his mercy. You have been given a second chance to serve him, she whispered. I squeezed her hand. Yes, but not as a slave, Layla. As a son. She looked at me, confused, but then the door opened. Kareem entered. The boy stood by the door, afraid to come closer. He looked terrified. Guilt hung off him like the heavy sack I had carried on the bridge. He looked at me as if I were a ghost come to haunt him. Baba, he whispered, his voice cracking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I promise. I'll pray. I'll throw away the music. I'll be better. Just please don't die again. I looked at my son. I saw the fear I had planted. I saw the harvest of my harshness. He was bargaining for his father's life with his own freedom. Come here, Kareem, I rasped. He approached slowly, flinching as he reached the bedside, as if expecting a blow or a lecture. I reached out my hand, the hand that had almost struck him days ago. I grabbed his arm, and I pulled him down into a hug. Kareem froze. I hadn't hugged him since he was a small child. I held him tight, smelling the scent of his hair, feeling the shake in his shoulders. "Baba?" I buried my face in his shoulder. I began to weep, not the dignified, silent weeping of a martyr, but the messy, heaving sobs of a man undone. "Forgive me," I choked out. "Forgive me, my son." Kareem didn't know what to do. He patted my back awkwardly. "Baba, it's okay. You're okay. You're alive." I pulled back, looking into his eyes. "No, listen to me. I was wrong." The room went silent. Layla stopped crying. The idea of Tariq admitting he was wrong was more impossible than coming back from the dead. "I taught you that God is a judge holding a hammer," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I taught you that you have to build a bridge to him with your own perfection. I lied to you." I don't understand," Kareem stammered. "I fell, Kareem," I said, clutching his hand. "I died, and my deeds, they were dust. They couldn't hold me up. I fell into the dark." "But Allah saved you," Layla interjected soothingly. "He gave you another chance." I looked at my wife, then back to my son. I took a breath. A man caught me. A man with holes in his hands. Layla gasped. "Tariq, the medication. You are delirious." "It was not medication." My eyes locked onto Kareem's. "He caught me. When I was filthy with my own pride, he held me. He didn't ask me to pray first. He didn't ask me to be perfect. He didn't ask me to recite the Quran. He just loved me." I squeezed Kareem's hand. "I tried to force you to be righteous, Kareem, but I only made you afraid. I am so sorry. You don't have to earn my love. You never did. And you don't have to earn God's." Kareem started to cry, the confusion melting into relief, the tension leaving his shoulders for the first time in years. 3 months have passed since that day. I sat in the courtyard of my home. It was sunset. The Adhan began to call out across the city. I stood up to go to the mosque, but I moved differently now. The rush was gone. The rigid military posture was gone. The scorecard in my head was gone. I walked out the door. Kareem was sitting on the steps, tying his shoes. "Are you coming?" I asked gently. Kareem looked up. I think so. But Baba, I haven't memorized the surah you told me to." I tried, but I smiled. I reached down and ruffled his hair, a gesture so affectionate it still surprised him. "We go to thank him, Kareem," I said, "not to pay him." As we walked down the street, a neighbor, old Mr. Haddad, stopped us. "Sheikh Tariq," Haddad said, bowing slightly. "I heard you are back to teaching next week. Will you be speaking on the punishments of the grave? The youth need to hear it. They are getting wild." I paused. I looked at the orange sky. I remembered the feeling of the grip that saved me. I remembered the black tar dissolving under the touch of grace. "No, Haddad," I said softly. "I have a new lesson." "Oh, what is the topic?" I looked at my hands. I could almost feel the phantom warmth of the scar against my skin. "The carpenter," I said. "I am going to teach them about the carpenter who builds bridges out of love." I put my arm around my son's shoulder. "Come, Kareem." And together, we walked toward the prayer hall, 2 men crossing the street, no longer afraid of the fall.